Hi class, Mr. Butler here. This video is going to teach you how to gather evidence for both sides of the think, pair, share activity for chapter 1 in Of Mice and Men. So as you guys know, the TPS activities, or the think, pair, share, are designed for partners to work together to do that. And it may be possible that I figure out a way to have you work with a partner to do TPSs, but for now you're going to do both sides of the question on your own. So for chapter 1 in Of Mice and Men, the question is about how George treats Lennie. So the entire novel is really centered on the friendship and the relationship between George and Lennie. And in chapter 1, there is lots of evidence that shows that George is selfish. He thinks of himself and puts himself first regarding his relationship with Lennie. But there's also lots of examples of George helping Lennie out and treating him like a good friend and taking care of him. As you may have noticed when you read chapter 1 and answered the questions, Lennie is probably intellectually challenged in the way that he's characterized in the first chapter, and George is clearly his caretaker, but his treatment of Lennie is a little bit suspect. So let's look over here at the TPS. We see the two sides. A, find examples of George acting selfless. That means putting Lennie first. And here, find examples of George acting selfish towards Lennie. Let's start with George acting selfish. So if we go over here to the text, I'm not going to read all of chapter 1, but I do have two examples picked out on page 5 of the PDF of George acting selfishly. This would be side B. This would be him putting himself first. So here George says, "You gonna get that wood?" George demanded. "There's plenty right up against the back of the sycamore. Floodwater wood. Now you get it." Here George is ordering Lennie around, kind of treating him like a boss, so he is definitely putting himself first by making Lennie do this work. Lennie went behind the tree and brought out a litter of dried leaves and twigs. He threw them in a heap in the old ash pile and went back for more and more. It was almost night now. See, they're creating a fire so that they can cook their dinner. Here's another example of George acting selfishly. Lennie watched him from the fire. He said patiently, "I like him with ketchup." He's talking about the beans they're about to have for dinner over the campfire. George says, "Well, we ain't got any." George exploded. "Whatever we ain't got, that's what you want. God Almighty, if I was alone, I could live so easy. I could go and work a job with no trouble, no mess at all, and when the end of the month come, I could take my $50 and go into town and get whatever I want." So George and Lennie, being migrant farmers, they go from place to place, trying to find work. And here George is saying, "I would be better off alone. I would be better off if I didn't have you dragging me down." So these two examples are really good textual evidence of George acting selfishly. So let's put them in the right place on the chart. Here, I'm going to take this example that I've highlighted. I'm going to right-click. I'm going to go copy. I'm going to go over here. I'm going to right-click again. Let's see what it looks like. Oh, nice. Now I'm going to take away this extra space for formatting. This comes from page 5 of the, up here you can tell the page number of the PDF. So I'm going to put in page 5, paragraph. We don't have to worry about the paragraph number for right now. So this is a clear example of George acting selfishly. Let's take this other one, this other example regarding Lennie's desire for ketchup. And George exploding into his diatribe about how he would be so much better off alone. So here we have two really great pieces of evidence that shows George's selfishness. But as the chapter continues, let's go over here to this page, we see examples of George feeling guilty and then treating Lennie well. George looked quickly and searchingly at him. "I've been mean, ain't I?" There's a moment of self-reflection here. George is feeling a little bit guilty. Here is Lennie. "If you don't want me, I can go off in the hills, find a cave. I can go away any time." Now, we can tell that Lennie is not going to make it on his own. George says, "No, look, I was just fooling Lennie, 'cause I want you to stay with me. Trouble with mice is you always kill 'em." He paused. "Tell you what I'll do, Lennie. First chance I get, I'll give you a pup. Maybe you wouldn't kill it. That'd be better than mice, and you can pet it harder." So the thing about Lennie is he likes soft things. He has this kind of tactile need to touch soft little animals. But the problem is he's very gentle in spirit, but his physical strength causes him to kill these animals inadvertently. He doesn't mean to. This dovetails nicely with our argument essay about pets in the workplace. Clearly, they're not a good idea for Lennie, but George is thinking, maybe if I get you a puppy, that's a big enough animal that you won't kill it. All right, so let's go over here and take this example. We're going to select it. We're going to right-click, copy, go over here. Example of George acting selfless. Paste. Page 6 of the PDF. Let's go back to the text to find another example. Now this is really key because here George shares a fantasy of an idyllic future with Lennie that they share together as friends. Guys like us that work on ranches are the loneliest guys in the world. They got no family. Here you're going to notice the word family is misspelled. That's an example of dialect to show the sort of Western style of English, sort of like a country accent that these guys are speaking in. They don't belong no place. They come to a ranch and work up a stake, and then they go out into town, and blow their stake. And the first thing you know, they're pounding their tail on some other ranch. They ain't got nothing to look ahead to. Lennie was delighted. That's it. Now tell how it is with us. George went on. With us, it ain't like that. We got a future. We got somebody to talk to that gives a damn about us. So here we see an example of, even though Lennie does drag George down, at least he provides companionship, which is important for both of them. So they rely on each other for that friendship. So let's take this example. Here, George, I think he's acting pretty selflessly because he is sharing this fantasy with Lennie, trying to make him feel better, trying to remind them that they're friends. So I'm going to go over here, put this in the chart, and I got this from page 7 of the document. Now, make sure you fill this up. I found 2 examples for each side. I'm sure you can find an additional example for each side. Now, another word about the TPS, you're going to answer this question: to what extent is George a true friend? So Lennie's misspelled here. Let me make sure there's 2 N's. So you see both sides of their relationship. You see George treating Lennie like he is worthless and he doesn't belong with him, but then also this need for companionship. So it's up to you to decide how much of a good friend is George to Lennie. Remember when we did Garcia Girls, we had those to what extent words. So is George completely a good friend, a true friend to Lennie? Is he not at all a true friend? Or like most of these TPS questions, we know it's somewhere in between on the spectrum. So you want to use a word like somewhat, mostly, barely to express the extent to which they're true friends. Make sure to use at least one piece of evidence for both sides and explain a lot in your TPS. A couple other announcements before we go. You're going to notice that there are no assignments on Jupyter Grades anymore. All of the assignment grades are going to be recorded on Google Classroom now, except for that each week on Thursday, beginning with this Thursday, you will get a participation grade. Your participation grade depends on how many assignments you complete. If you don't complete any assignments, you get a 0. You get a 1 if you do 1 assignment, 2 if you do 2, 3 if you do 3, and 4 if you do all 3 at a high level. I'm only going to be assigning 3 assignments per week, so I'm going to count up all the assignments that you completed, and that will be your participation grade on Jupyter. If you have any questions, let me know in a comment, and good luck, guys.